please welcome my new best friend, Erin Robertson.
Well, I think that we instantly became best friends because she gave me this 3D printed banana. And I was like, oh great, you brought me breakfast. And I can have it forever though. Thank you.
You're welcome. So for people who aren't familiar with Project Runway, you were really famous for your use of bananas and weird embellishments like mealworms. So where does this kind of idea, or where do these ideas and inspiration come from?
So I think that that's a great question to sort of start with curiosity, because I think that through these sort of discoveries with the unconventional materials, there's a new way of thinking about textiles and the way that sort of fashion already exists. So playing around with something that you'd be like, oh, these are just mealworms for chickens, and then guitar picks and auxiliary cords. When you rethink the way that they're made, you can put them together in a different way and hide it so it looks like something else. And for me, that's one of my favorite tricks to do with fashion is hide this a deeper message into something that can be a little bit more fun and whimsical. So that's sort of, for me, that's how I like.
So kind of going off of that, you've also used 3D printing materials in your recent line, and you're doing a line about sea creature sexuality. Mm-hmm. So how do you kind of push yourself to stay out of your comfort zone?
So with the collection that I just recently finished, it was called Sexual Helix, and it was about just thinking about how humans are animals, and we're no different than a sea creature or anything, just trying to express ourselves in certain ways. And so for me, I really love when fashion can have a meaning behind it. And it can, again, tell a story about maybe something that we don't know about ourselves. So I wanted to make it an educational, scientific sort of, but really fun project. So I chose really interesting creatures like a tardigrade or a cuttlefish or jellyfish. Some of them are pretty normal, but just doing research on them and finding about how they have sex. It was the funniest thing. So I was like, oh my God, there's just an ocean full of semen out there. And so it's just and I just also love that that's my job, where I'm just doing research about animals having sex. But it's also, what I've learned is that through all these projects and these collections that I do, that there's always something I learn about myself as a human, which I think is kind of all of our goal. Every day we find out more about ourselves, so yeah.
Kind of going off of that, so this might not apply for sea creatures. It's not like they have intellectual property or anything. But where do you kind of draw that line between inspiration and intellectual property or appropriation?
Yeah, great question. Because I think that's a really difficult problem that a lot of designers have. Because I think that we're everything's been done. So how do you kind of do something new? And it was so funny because I kind of didn't answer a question about 3D printing, but in the collection that I did, I was inspired by the Japanese pufferfish, which creates this amazing mandala in the ocean and the seafloor.
Have you guys seen a video of that?
It's
really
amazing. It's one of the coolest videos I've ever seen. This fish works for 24/7, doesn't go to sleep, and it only just uses its fins and its little mouth, and it creates this huge mandala in the water that's mathematically perfect. So I took
just to get a new boo.
Yeah, it's just for a mate. And if no one works like that, except maybe some of us could probably do that.
Yeah, they don't have Tinder.
There's no Tinders for Japanese pufferfish. I was what would that be called? Gilder. So I worked with an engineer, and he created a 3D modeled the Japanese mandala, and I 3D printed it and then embellished it, and kind of just again the layers of, I'm embellishing this thing that a Japanese pufferfish would embellish, and just kind of the layers of intellectual thought was into these embellishments that you would just look at and you'd be oh my God, it's so sparkly and cute, but really there's all this meaning to it.
Yeah. Have you ever kind of pulled inspiration from another designer in that same way that you're kind of pulling inspiration from the fish, and how do you kind of balance that of being like not an exact copy?
Yeah, I mean, it's super difficult because you know how many people wear a button-up shirt, and it's how do you redesign a button-up shirt to make it different, to make it unique, and to give it your own sort of like individuality as far as being a designer, but also being someone who wears a button-up shirt. So I think that it's pretty difficult because you can't copyright fashion because we have to wear clothes. So like everyone has to be clothed, usually. So usually, so but it's really difficult because again, it's like so many things have been done. But one of the reasons why I love sort of textile discovery is because I think that one of the biggest thing that's going to be changing the fashion landscape is going to be what things are made out of. Because unless the human body changes, like we grow an arm or something, there's only so many different variables you can do with silhouette. So, and kind of like going into 3D printing and my sort of interest in innovative textiles, I recently collaborated with a student, a PhD student at the Media Lab, Jifei Wu, and he's doing 3D printed fur.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, so he has the machine. He's like, that was his like was one of his PhD projects. And I was at a conference and I was kind of talking shit about 3D printing because it's so hard and it's
Even
like,
with this banana?
no, this is a different situation in reference to fashion. But it's like, with so many 3D printing like options, everything is super hard and you just like plop it on and you're like, cool, 3D printing, fashion.
Because I know they've used like maker bots in the past on like Project Runway.
Yeah, and again, they're just like these like rigid plastic pieces. So I was just kind of being like, oh, whatever. And then someone was like, there's some really soft fur over there. And I was like, so I went over to Jifei and we just connected immediately. And so him and I have been working on this project for about a year and we just finished our first garment. So it's been like super amazing.
He's been printing for a year?
No, just like, we're both really busy. So it's been like difficult to make it happen. But we just finished it and we presented it in New York to like kick off New York Fashion Week. So, but like that is like my favorite thing about fashion is like that he's the only one with this 3D printing machine and we're making, for me, I'm like, I feel like we're making history. I'm like, this is so cool to like this isn't perfect now, but to think about what it can be in like 20 years just gets me so excited.
And it like feels like fur and everything.
It's so soft. It feels like chinchilla.
What?
It's really insane. I wish I brought a sample. I'd pass it around.
Me and our photographer Meg actually work at a 3D printing software company, so we printed this banana, but we've never printed anything that soft. So I'm really interested to see what that feels like. You're also kind of an activist for underrepresented groups. So where do you think artists or creators have an obligation to, outside of their art, to their consumers?
I mean, I think that we just owe it to ourselves and like humanity and nature to just make sure that our footprint is always going to be less. Like, I mean, and it's all like sort of self-discovery. I used to be super frivolous with plastic cups and just like straws, and I never thought about anything. And then I was like, found out about the Pacific Trash Vortex, and I was like, I can't use plastic. And so I always catch myself, and it's really good because I just like, I catch myself being very sort of just for the convenience and the quickness of it. And so it's been really nice for me to just notice certain like issues that are happening and like rethink the way that I grew up or the way that these patterns that I've like created for myself. So it's been, and again, it's like everything. It's just like having conversations about underrepresented groups and just being aware of that. And I think, I mean, I'm very fortunate. I have a very amazing creative group of friends where we have these conversations so we're very aware of it.
Yeah. So I know that like in the past you've talked about like your issue with fast fashion and how it kind of takes advantage of not only like the designers and creators, but also the people who are actually making them in like Africa and Asia. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think that there's like a huge problem with fast fashion, but even in the sense of like luxury fashion brands. And for me, I think the biggest thing that is bothering me is the marketing and thinking about like needing to have a new outfit every day and to just buy the latest trends. And, and I'm a victim of that too. It's like getting rid of a habit that's just like this terrible thing. And if we had to meet the people that made the clothes that we get from Zara or H&M or Forever 21 or any of these places that, I think that you wouldn't brag about getting something for $5. Because I would catch myself being like, oh yeah, I got this on sale for $5. But then I was like, I would never make and sell something for $5. Yeah. So if I'm not gonna do that, then why is someone else? Yeah. So I think that there was and I think that, again, I think that's why I love technology and innovation, because it's thinking about how factories can change in the future so things won't have to be manufactured so cheap.
That's amazing. I also want to kind of open the floor up to the audience. If you guys have any questions of your own, so that it's not just us talking, as much as I would love to just keep going. Yes?
Because of your infatuation with sea creatures, I was just curious if you've seen Shape of Water, or are you going to be seeing Black Panther?
Shape of Water. I am going to see Black Panther, but I haven't heard of Shape of Water.
It's an Oscar nom. This woman
I'm not
falls in
current
love
sometimes.
with a sea creature.
Yeah, Shape of Water is it's the body sea creature. There's some sexy things in there. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, sexy sea creatures, I'm there. So.
It was nominated for multiple Oscars, right, or something like that?
Yes, I think it's the most nominated film this year.
Wow.
You got to see it then.
I'm on it.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Where are you doing your laser cutting and your laser printing? I know you work with GFA at MIT, and then also you're associated.
Yeah, so I have a residency at Autodesk where I don't know if you guys know the space, but it's they have a build space where there's 3D printers, laser cutters, they have a wood shop, CNC router, and just a bunch of equipment there. So.
Autodesk is really funny to me because I was on the T and there was a competitor ad on the T, and someone from Autodesk went and put their sticker over the brand name.
Honestly, shout out. That's amazing.
I know we had a question there.
Oh yeah, no, I just have a question about sustainability in your fashion. So talking about plastic cups, straws, etc. 3D printing is a great way to kind of reduce and recycle, but are there any other ways, especially in fabrications, that you're going after sustainability?
I think that just talking about the 3D printed fur and how, it's a long ways until this gets figured out and all the kinks and it works, right? So I actually had a difficult time with that after coming out of school and going on Project Runway and then starting my business, because I have such a high standard of what is actually sustainable. So thinking about, I don't want to use polyester and I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And then I just started realizing that every single thing is just nothing. If you ever want to be 100% sustainable, you just can't. So I make things on a small scale. I don't mass produce anything. So I really like the idea of slow fashion, things being made locally. I have a studio in the South End where I make my stuff. So for me, it's just really important to also kind of get rid of that message of fast fashion and just, it's where did your food come from? Where did your clothes come from?
So I kind of want to go more into the locally made stuff. So Massachusetts and Boston are not really known for their fashion kind of communities. So what are you doing in Boston, or what do you think Boston has to contribute to that industry?
I always get asked this question. So for me, I think with the internet, there's a lot of fashion communities that I'm connected to. So for me, I'm not I need fashionable people around me. For me, what I love about Boston is I think the energy and the excitement about innovation is just unlike a lot of other cities. So that's what gets me excited about Boston. It's not necessarily the fashion industry as you think of it, but an excitement to sort of change what the fashion industry even is.
Do we have other questions?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your editing process, just sort of how you know when you're done, how do you know when to push further, or graphic designers, just sort of, I watch the show, and it's sort of similar themes that I noticed in fashion that you feel in graphic design too.
Yeah. I think that's like it's a tough time to figure it out, because I feel like, especially with like embellishing or something with sparkle stuff, I could probably just go on forever. And for a minute I thought I was a minimalist, which was like hilarious, and someone was like, you need to calm down, like you're doing too much. So I think what I always do, I catch myself and just try to stay and not do too much, because sometimes simplifying and being simple is actually really difficult. It's really easy to over-design or overdo it. So I always will just be like, okay, just take away, and I find out that works pretty well.
I know we had another question over there, I thought. No? Yeah, go ahead.
Why did you choose that outfit today?
That's a really good question. I went to bed at like 4 a.m. and I just wanted to wear something that felt like a pajama. But I was like, it's a colorful sweater, so it looks good. I'll put some sparkly earrings on. It's a really good question.
So you've worked with other designers like in the past. Can you talk a little bit more about like what it's like to collaborate while still, making sure that your voice kind of shines in that piece?
Again, a great question. I love that one. Collaboration is one of my favorite things. I think obviously if you do it with the right person. One of the first people I really collaborated a lot with was my friend Jordan Piantadosi, who's a painter, and I met her at Mass Art. And she has a totally different skill set than I have. I can't draw well at all. Like it just gives me like the clammiest hands. And she can't do anything 3D related at all. So we have totally different skill set, but our intent and our emotions and our energy and passion is all like very related. And it's also just like really amazing to see how you can have these shared visions and see it represented in a different form.
I kind of want to go off of that, but slightly change gears. So I know all of you probably want to hear about Project Runway. So obviously you were kind of like a fan favorite throughout the season. How do you think you were portrayed? Do you think it was accurate? And kind of talk about like the accuracy of reality television.
I think it was pretty solid. It wasn't too bad. There were a couple moments where I feel like I said a lot of really great things that were never added in there, and sometimes I wish that they would have just, like, it was actually more fun. And like, I don't know, there were so many better moments where they don't even show it, and that was kind of a bummer, but the one episode that I wasn't portrayed correctly was the Mean Girl episode.
I don't remember this.
It's the one where I was in a group with Cornelius and Dexter, and Tim Gunn called us Mean Girls, and we weren't at all. So, but it was crazy because then like after, online there was so much internet hate, and I've never experienced something like that. And yeah. I was like, at least if I deserved it, I would be okay with it. But I didn't do anything wrong, so I was like, guys, I'm nice.
So do you guys not have any control, I guess, over like the editing?
No control over it. I mean, we have no control anyways. You basically revert back to being a child. They like took away my cell phone. There was no computers, no books, no notebooks, no TV, no music, no magazines, nothing.
What?
They remove you from everything, and like you don't have a key to the hotel. You just like sleep in a twin bed with like 3 other people.
Oh my God.
Not in the same bed. That would be really crazy.
So actually our host used to work in reality. So Keith also used to work in reality television.
Ooh.
And something that he told me was that they had to film every scene 3 times and try to make it look organic. Did they have to do that with you guys too?
When we're sewing, no. When we're like actually doing legitimate work, we had to make each garment 5 times. No, but like there'd be like times where we were like in the booth with like the mannequins behind us, and they'll ask you the same question like 5 times and like word it in a different way. And then so like by the end I'd be like, I'm just gonna say the same thing. And you always have to say everything in the present moment, so that way they can take something that you say from this part and add it to a different episode. So I never gave them any juice, even though I would have said some stuff.
Did you have to do a lot of reactions like, girl?
Yeah, they did. They'll be like, so like talk like Heidi, and I was like, no. Like not gonna get you making me like do a German accent.
Models would be shot 3 times.
Oh yeah, like the runway is shot a couple, like they do the model, like the runway 3 times, like one with music, one with us talking, and then one with the judges. So it's just like.
Yeah, it kind of looks like they just walk down there and they stand there for like 5 minutes and they try to cut that together. Is that what it exactly what happens?
I mean, it's way more awkward than it looks. Just like, there was also this thing called ice, where we weren't allowed to talk, or there'd be hard ice when we weren't allowed to talk. There's different ices, like hard ice and regular ice. And one where we could talk, but not talk about the show, because if we wanted to say anything, they wanted to get it on camera. So, it's fun. Exciting.
Do you think you would go back on another season of All Stars?
Of All Stars? All Stars, maybe. I mean, it's funny because people would ask, like, would you do it again, like, right after? And I was like, no. And then now that I've had time to process it and, like, understand
like when you
everything.
have a baby.
Yeah, I'll have another baby. I'll have another Project Runway baby.
Does anyone ever, yeah. No, I was going to ask if anyone else had questions about Project Runway.
I was wondering how do you balance your artistic vision with the consumer's needs, or make it functional and people really want? Because a lot of time I look at the fashion designer's design, I was like, I would never wear that. I could never wear that. So how do you maintain your artistic vision with the, and do you do any market research?
Yeah, I mean, and I make a lot of weird stuff, and things where you wouldn't necessarily wear it to work. So I try to do like a balance, because the stuff that excites me is the weird stuff that is most likely not wearable, to like, writing the tea or something. Well, it depends on what you're doing, but, so it's just a balance. I mean, I think the great thing with Instagram is I have like a direct contact with who my audience is. So it's really great to be able to see that, to be able to have that relationship and like just directly talk to them. So, because people will be like, I like this, do more of that, I want to see this. So.
Do you still collaborate with like your mass art homies? Actually, your friend Rosa was also a CreativeMornings speaker when we did like Audience Takes the Stage. She talked about magic. You guys check it out. She talks about how she got her O1 visa.
Wow, that's really exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, do you still collaborate with your mass art homies?
Yes, and I do work with Jordan a lot still. She's just a sweet angel to work with. She's just so, she cares so much about the world and everybody, so it's really nice to have that energy. And so yes, I mean, I collaborate with her, but the most recent collaboration was with GFA. So I'm trying to like collaborate with engineers. It's my fave, yeah.
I'm an engineer, so.
I'm like, call me.
Yes.
Are you doing any wearable tech?
Wearable tech?
Yeah.
I mean, I think technically, laser cutting and like 3D printing would count as that. And laser cutting is one of my favorite things to do, just because it's a nice way to get a special embellishment that, again, you can't find anywhere else, but isn't that over the top.
But nothing that necessarily interacts with the actual wearable.
No, not yet. But this is why I like Boston, because these opportunities are there.
Do you think that's, what do you think the future for wearable tech is going?
I think it's there's sometimes where I feel like the interaction between, like, I don't know, like there's like these things that are in the clothes that connect to your phone. I think, like, I like this stuff of thinking about like synthetic biology and how like that sort of wearable technology can like interact with your body physically.
Like change color and stuff?
Yeah, or like be able to communicate if there's like something wrong in your body, to be able to be like, oh hey, like this is wrong, fix
No,
it.
that's too much Black Mirror for me.
I could get into it.
Do you have other questions? Yes.
What about the business side? How do you balance that with the artistic side?
Great question. I mean, that's probably been about the last year and a half of trying to figure that out. I went to art school, so if anyone did go to art school, the amount of business that's talked about is very minimal. And even if it was talked about, it was like more so going to work for someone, not starting your own business. I mean, this is why people go to business school, because it's like a whole thing. But I think what's exciting is, I work with Jennifer, where she's like super smart and she helps me figure these things out that I don't know. And again, it's like surrounding yourself by people that can give you input and give you ideas. And I mean, you can't do anything alone. So I mean, for me, I'm always talking, and then like when I meet people, I'll be like, hey, I'm doing this, and I'll be like, oh, I have an idea for you to do that. So, but it's definitely difficult. I think that what I try to do is be creative with thinking about business, so it doesn't seem like business. It's like business.
Unfortunately, we have to stop there. We're out of time. But will everybody please give me a round of applause?